First of all, I want to say congratulations to all the honorees tonight. Really spectacular. And on a very personal level, I want to thank Senator Kaine. I'm going to interrupt Senator Kaine. I want to thank Senator Kaine for his history lesson, which is one that's been a great part of my life. And thank you for everything you're doing. There should be war no more. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I've been asked to introduce tonight's stellar honoree. And I can go through her biography. You know, Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield has served for nearly 40 years as a Foreign Service officer. And that is a salute to every single Foreign Service officer in this room, of which there are many. Thank you, thank you, thank you. On a night when we're all aware of the growing disaster for the people in Africa where Ebola is concerned, there's no one who understands this challenge and has met this challenge in the way that Ambassador Thomas-Greenfield has in her own service. She was the Assistant Secretary of African Affairs, but she served all over the world, including as ambassador in Liberia. But I think when she began her career, and I say this to all the young people here, which is everyone except me. When she began her career nearly 40 years ago, I don't think she probably imagined that she was going to be our ambassador to the United Nations. She should have been. She should have known that about herself, because I've had the privilege of not only being her boss, but being her colleague and her friend. There is no one more knowledgeable. When President Biden looked around to who should be his ambassador to the United Nations, he knew that the Security Council was having a little bit of a problem, that the UN General Assembly and what we call the Global South was having greater power because a lot of things were happening in the UN General Assembly. And who could pick up the phone and call every one of those presidents and prime ministers, particularly on the continent of Africa? Every one of them. I can tell you because I've been on the other side of that phone call listening. It was Ambassador Thomas-Greenfield. And she is kind and smart and generous and tough as nails. I can say a lot about Linda. But what I really want people to know is her heart. Her heart. She has mentored more young people to come up through the ranks as Director General of the Foreign Service, but way beyond that. She has helped people see who they are, see the leader they can be, and help them to get there. She is what we all hope to be: kind, generous, a leader, a teacher, a mentor, and tough as nails. I give you Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Wendy. What a gift it is for me to be introduced by someone whose own leadership has meant so much to me in this field and to me personally. So not only did Wendy teach me about leadership, she taught me how to speed walk. through New York people traffic the first time I went to New York with her. Both lessons served me well during my tenure as ambassador to the United Nations. Thank you so much, Andrew. Where are you seated, Andrew? Thank you, Andrew Albertson, and everyone at Foreign Policy for America for recognizing me this evening. Thank you for the important work you do to support our democracy, which is being threatened on a daily basis. And I want to congratulate all the award winners. I have to tell you, when he talked about me being tough as nails, I'm a crybaby. And I have cried many times. But when our colleagues from Odisha stood up and talked about saving the lives of babies, I could not hold back the tears. And I've been drying my eyes since then so that I don't cry now. But the work that you are doing is so important to our future. And I just want to encourage you to keep up the amazing work that you're doing. Foreign Policy for America's commitment to democracy, accountability, and human rights is not just something we admire. It is necessary, and it is necessary especially now. To Ned Price, my former deputy at the U.S. Mission to the United Nations, your strategic thinking was central to everything we accomplished together there, and I look forward to our conversation in a few minutes. And to all of you in this room, Senator Kaine, other representatives, thank you so much for your service. Thank you for what you are doing to support our democracy. All of you in this room are the best of peers and friends, the very people who've devoted much of your lives to protecting this country at home and abroad. It is such an honor for me to be honored by you tonight, and it is an honor to be with you in this room tonight. Over 40 years ago in 1982, I found myself issuing visas in Jamaica. I never thought at that point, as Wendy said, that I couldn't even have imagined that I would be standing here with you today, but to go on to serve as the President's ambassador to the United Nations was extraordinary. And in his words, he would say every single time he saw me, "That woman, that's America's voice to the world." And if you can tell, I still love it. It breaks my voice. It makes me want to laugh. It makes me want to cry. Because my life story gave no hint of this. I grew up in the segregated rural South, the oldest of 8 children to hardworking but poor parents. They would be so proud to see where I ended up because it was not even in their wildest dreams. I remember when they both voted for the first time in Louisiana. I mean, can you imagine? In my age, they voted for the first time, but how important to them voting was. And we're now watching as those hard-fought for rights are being stripped away, not only in my home state, but across our country. Despite all the odds and unlikeliness of it all, I've had the opportunity to represent our nation, our culture, our values, and our people to the world. Over the course of my career, I have worked for 6 presidents, both Republicans and Democrats alike, and even had the pleasure, as you heard, to serve on the president's cabinet, to serve as Assistant Secretary of State for Africa, my dream job that I didn't know was my dream job. Director General of the Foreign Service, also a dream job that I didn't know was a dream job. An ambassador to Liberia, which was a dream job that I constantly dreamed of, but never thought would be a reality. Along the way, I have been surrounded by extraordinary colleagues, people who, like me, were driven by a shared commitment to improve lives and to make a difference, one act of kindness, one cable at a time. My journey has taken me around the world, from palaces and presidential offices to remote villages and refugee camps. Every person I've met in every single role left an indelible mark on me. It is from those people across 4 decades of negotiations, advocacy, problem solving, and the occasional impossible situation that I've learned what real leadership looks like. And for me, it comes down to 2 things. The first is people. People are key to foreign policy and to diplomacy. Today, we're seeing our diplomatic prowess diminish significantly because we do not have the people needed to do the work. Whether it's evacuating our people who were caught in the crisis most recently in the Middle East, or negotiating with the Iranians to get a deal we had already painstakingly negotiated several years ago by the likes of Wendy Sherman. And we should give Wendy a hand of applause. We need people. The State Department, our foreign policy platform, is only a shadow of what it used to be. More than 100 ambassadorial slots around the world do not have Senate-confirmed ambassadors. We only have 12 ambassadors posted in Africa, and neither in Uganda or DRC do we have an ambassador when a crisis is upon us there. Now, don't get me wrong. In many posts, we do have dedicated, hard-working chargés who are working to promote U.S. interests, but they're working with one hand tied behind their backs. They're not Senate-confirmed, and they do not always have the support of their leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, offices and lives have been destroyed. Without people, we cannot carry out a foreign policy for the American people. So thank you again, Foreign Policy for America, for making foreign policy for America first. Secondly, I have always, and Wendy mentioned this, I've always relied on a 2-word mantra I adopted decades ago: be kind. And being kind does not mean being weak. Even in the hard-nosed field of foreign diplomacy, when we're squaring off against global adversaries, being kind has always been my first move. And it can be disarming, because being a genuine, decent, compassionate person will get you further in life and on the negotiating table than anything else. Yet today, we're witnessing just the opposite. Policies based on bullying, threats, intimidation. Real leaders are those whose motives are rooted in the greater good of humanity, those who have pledged their allegiance to our country and to our country's values rather than a person or ideology. That is the standard this community holds dear, and it is one worth fighting every single day for. So thank you again, Foreign Policy for America, for this honor. Thank you all for the work that you and every person in this room tonight does every single day to keep that standard alive. Friends, it matters more now than ever. Thank you very much. And Ned?
There we go. Let me start by saying, Ambassador, there is a lot that I miss about working with you day in, day out, but it does occur to me that if you and I were seated like this, back in the old office, we would probably be preparing for a high-stakes meeting, probably in the Situation Room, and you would be the one peppering me with questions. And so tonight, I am very glad the tables are turned, but I have been reminded—
Be kind.
I have been reminded you are being honored and not roasted, so I will absolutely keep that in mind. More seriously, Ambassador, let me just take a moment to reinforce what we've heard tonight, including from Ambassador Sherman. We all know what you've done, but not everyone in this room may recognize, may know how you've done it, how you've gone about doing that. Just as you said, you've done it with kindness. You've done it with empathy. You've done it with humility. And yes, you've done it with principled determination. And gumbo. Gumbo diplomacy was a critical part of our work at the UN and throughout her career. President Biden did call you America's voice to the world, but I think what has struck so many of us is that you listen and you hear as effectively as you speak, and that has served you well over the course of your career. There's one other commonality to your approach that I just want to mention before we get to the conversation. We all know the senior-most positions you've had. I won't recite them, but you've been a teacher. You've been a refugee coordinator. You've been the Director General of the Foreign Service, and I call those out because those are all roles that have people at the center of them. And just as you said, people have always been what you've put first. You've always championed your people, and tonight, Ambassador, I'm really glad that your people are here championing you. And we have a table of USUN colleagues, table 10 over there, along with many, many friends throughout this room championing you tonight. All right, that's enough praise. Now we're going to go to the tough questions. Ambassador, I want to spend a few moments tonight talking about the past, the present, and the future. And unfortunately, we don't have unlimited time, but we can at least get the conversation started. I want to start with the past. As you told us, as we heard just a moment ago, you're a child of Baker, Louisiana. Neither of your parents graduated high school. Your father was illiterate. It was never preordained that you would become President Biden's ambassador to the United Nations. So, in a short couple moments, tell us: was there a single moment? Was there a turning point where that path became clear to you?
Honestly, there was never a turning point that I recognized. I got up every morning with the goal of doing something, one thing, to change somebody's life. That was my goal in life, that I would make a difference to one person, at least one person every single day. And most days I didn't know who that person was or what I did, but I was confident that I had done something. As I moved up in my career, I started seeing the people and knowing who the people were that I made a difference to. And that gave me even more encouragement to try to do things to make a difference. I didn't work for a promotion. I didn't work hard to get into senior positions. And I certainly had no clue that being the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations was in the cards for me. In fact, I didn't know that I was being considered for that position until I got a call saying the president-elect would like to see you and talk to you about interview you for the job. And I said, what job? When did the president start to interview? Because I made the assumption, and I'm learning not to make assumptions, that maybe Tony would pick me to be his deputy secretary because I was leading the transition team for the State Department. But I didn't even know that. And I thought, well, why would the president interview me? I was being vetted for something I knew, but why would the president interview me for a job in the State Department? So I called Tony. And I said, I don't know what's going on. And he said, you don't know what you're being considered for? And I said, I don't. And he said, you're being considered for the next UN ambassador to the United Nations and a member of the president's cabinet. And that was the moment that I knew. And again, it's not something I sought. It's not something that I had ambitions for. My ambition every single day was just to do a good job at whatever job it was that I was being given.
We could spend the next hour talking about the present, and there is so much that is going on around us day in, day out over yes, the past 18 months, but even longer than that. But I want to ask you, I've heard you refer to this period repeatedly as an era of change. And I would love to hear you speak to what that means and what the implications are of this unfolding era.
You know, sometimes when you talk about change, people see change as something good. They certainly did not predict the changes that we are going through now, which have not been good by any means. What we're seeing is the complete destruction of our foreign policy apparatus. Did we need reform? Did we need some changes? Did we need to look at how we did development, how we carried out diplomacy, and figure out how to do it better? Absolutely. We were constantly looking at how we could improve and what we needed to do to improve. But the changes that we have witnessed over the past year and a half at least, have been destructive. They have destroyed lives. They have hurt people. And they continue to hurt people in a way that is totally unnecessary. And so it is so important that we continue to stay strong. We continue to work to support our democratic values, to support people who have been impacted by the current situation, and to continue to work with our partners and our friends and our adversaries to let them know that the deeply embedded values that we have are still there. They're not being reflected by the current administration by any means, but those values are there. Foreign Policy for America is core to what we're doing to make sure that we're ready for a future where we can bring our reputations, bring our values back to the table, and bring America back to a place of respect.
It's probably too depressing to continue with a conversation about the present. So let's just fast forward to the future. Let's focus on something that we can all hope at least is brighter. You alluded to this, Ambassador, but we've heard over the course of today from many of our speakers that there's really no going back. That whether it's 2017 or 2021 or 2025, we can't just take a magic wand and wish away the changes that we've seen during this era of change, as you so aptly put it. So I'm curious, how do you think about reconceiving, not rebuilding, but reconceiving what comes next? And what do those changes look like to you? What does that change system look like to you?
Well, it still will be centered around people. So we have to continue to mentor this generation of people, young and middle-aged, who are still committed to being the center of U.S. values. And so we have to encourage them. When I get young people saying to me, should I still consider going into the Foreign Service? My answer is categorically yes. It will be difficult, but if you can't face challenges and difficulties, then you probably shouldn't be in the Foreign Service. So prepare yourselves for what will be a challenging period for anyone coming into the Foreign Service now. If you don't want to come into the State Department, there are other places to work in the private sector, in the NGO sector, to do the kinds of things that help people. And then my biggest recommendation, and I have done this throughout my career because I always felt that I missed out on Peace Corps. And interestingly, the administration hasn't touched Peace Corps, as far as I know. Peace Corps is still out there, and many of our best and brightest Foreign Service officers started as Peace Corps volunteers. And I think that is definitely a place that our young people should be looking. But we who are in the older generation, we have to start to strategize about what needs to happen. We're not going to be all of the experts. We have to start putting groups of people around a table and figure out how we will and again, I don't want to use the word reconstruct, but how we will construct anew our diplomacy and our foreign policy. We have to continue to focus on diversity. It is painful to be a Black woman in this country today. It's like we're wearing a badge of hatred, that when people in this administration see Black women. Diversity is not a bad word. Diversity is a very strong word, and we have to take into account the strength of our diversity as part of our foreign policy. So that's where I would start. There is so much work to be done, and we need everyone. It's all hands on deck. And the other thing I'll add is we have to talk to the other side, and it's painful to do that. We have to talk to them to understand where they're coming from and why they are there, but also we have to talk to them so they can understand where we're coming from and why we need to work together. We talk about bipartisanship. It's also just bringing communities of people together, bringing people together in churches, people who disagree with each other violently, to sit down and have that difficult conversation and see where the one string of agreement is among many disagreements, where you can come together and figure out a path forward. It's going to be hard work. It's going to take a lot of patience, a lot of flexibility, and a lot of just devotion to our values, because I know that no one wants to be in a room and watch a child die of malnutrition and hunger. That is not a bipartisan issue. No one wants to see people dying of Ebola. We cannot make every issue into a political issue. So we have to figure out what those issues are that we agree on, and then work forward from the issues we agree on and find a path where we can at least move in a positive direction for this country. Because if we don't, our young people, my grandchildren, won't have a country to inherit. And we have to make sure that that doesn't happen.
I'll try to fit in two final questions. We all know there's a big election coming up later this year. And of course, I'm referring to the election of the next UN Secretary General. I'm curious, Ambassador, if you want to offer your endorsement tonight. But barring that, we could see for the first time a woman at the helm of the United Nations. What qualities do you think we should look for? What qualities does that person need to embody?
You need to have someone who is a risk taker, who is willing to step out in a swirling sea and try to negotiate peace. We cannot have a Secretary General who does not see that her role is to end the scourge of war. That's the core of the charter. So first and foremost, the question to ask her is, how are you going to deal with issues of war and peace? What role do you see the Secretary General playing? What role does the Secretary General play with the Security Council? The Secretary General cannot be a person who wants to be all things to all people. Sometimes the Secretary General has to take a side and decide what the right approach is, not what the easiest approach is. The Secretary General has to be a representative of all countries and all people, not just the P5, not just the countries on the Security Council, but all 193 countries in the UN system. The Secretary General has to be kind and compassionate toward the world and make herself available to the world to address those problems. I think the first step that she will need to take is to set up a very, very small advisory group that will help her lay out the agenda that she will have for her first year. Because it's going to be her, she's going to have a lot more scrutiny than a man in the job. So she has to be on her mark from day one. And I can't tell you who that person will be. It's kind of open now. I actually think it is likely to be, I was going to use the word dark horse. That doesn't work. It's likely to be somebody whose name we haven't seen yet. That's my prediction.
Okay. Well, I have to say, a lot of those qualities and characteristics you just named of the next Secretary General sound a lot like someone on this stage. I don't know that you would get the endorsement of the current administration, but
I would not.
We think you should. Finally, just to close, we have many of our next-gen members in the audience this evening. We've heard from one of them. We've had a chance to speak with many of them over the course of today. What advice would you give to the young people in this room and well beyond, those who still want to do good and change the world?
Don't give up. Do not give up. Quitting is not an option for you. We have left you a mess to inherit, and we are depending on you to fix it for the generation that comes after you. So keep at it.
Keep at it. Thank you for keeping at it, Ambassador. Thank you for everything you've done. Thank you.